if he's dropping dimes on the defense, it ain't good. All right.
Right.
No, but so with the new rule that where all these support staff can actually coach and drill and those types of things. I don't know if you know, but we have a coach named J.P. Losman.
Sure.
And J.P. is one of our analysts, and he works with the defense mainly. But he was a first-round drafted quarterback for the Buffalo Bills several years ago. We actually tried to recruit him while I was at Kansas State, and but he bought the line, went somewhere else. And anyway, we had fun with that, talking about that yesterday. But JP is working the scout team quarterback, so he throws slightly better than Green Beans.
Wow, there's your headline coming out of this today. Jimmy Green Beans has officially retired.
Well, not officially.
Not officially.
Okay.
JP.
Every once in a while, if I get pissed off, I'm going to give me the damn ball.
Yeah. So every practice, you'll be out there at some point. Every once in a while. Yeah.
Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosevich, George Stoya here from the SoonerScoop.com studios. Welcome back to the SoonerScoop.com YouTube page. And I think football season kind of started today. We are now under a week from Oklahoma heading out onto the practice field. And today, George, we went out to the OU football coaches luncheon. It's an annual thing benefiting fostering futures, supporting the needs of foster children here in Oklahoma. And this was really good. It was kind of an intro to meeting Zac Alleny, Oklahoma's defensive coordinator. He was there with Oklahoma offense coordinators Seth Littrell as well as John Finley. And as you saw there, Brent Venables talking about Jimmy Green Beans, maybe hanging it up. But that's one of the things that's coming out of the new roles for some of the support staff. They're able to be out onto the field during practice, things like that. But a really good show for you all planned today. Got some new garb, too, some new stuff here on the set from College Football 25, good video game that I know, George. How's it coming? We gave a little bit of an update on the unofficial 40 yesterday.
I'm still working through the kinks. Not ready yet to compete, but still working at it.
It's preseason.
It is preseason. Carrie just bought a PlayStation for the office, so I'm about to get a lot of work in.
A lot of reps coming here over the next month before football actually gets underway. But as we said here at the top, practice starts next week. It's kind of crazy to think that they're going to be on the practice field in less than a week now.
Yeah, no, it's exciting though. And today kind of felt like you said, really football season getting going, because hearing from some of these coaches who, a lot of these guys we haven't heard from since the Alamo Bowl. We had never heard from Zac Alleny. I hope that we still get to maybe, because this sort of event, we're not asking questions.
Sure.
We're just there observing it.
It's a fact that Zac Alleny has spoken to, I guess, the public now for the first time, and he still hasn't been asked any questions of the media, but there were some questions asked of him today.
Yeah, and they were good questions. Credit to Toby Rowland, who was emceeing the event, as well as some of the fans that asked some good questions. So it was interesting just to hear from him, because we hadn't talked to him, and just kind of hear what he has to say about, not only taking this job, but what he thinks of this defense, Danny Stutzman, and then also just like we've heard it. We heard it through the spring that he and Brent Venables were clones. You're gonna hear it in these clips. I mean,
it's the voice, but also like kind of the mannerisms, stuff that he does with his hands,
the things they say. Like they are very the way they talk about the defense, the way they talk about Danny. Like it's very similar. I think you could turn off the video and just listen to the audio and be like, who's who?
Yeah.
So it was fun to hear from him, and as well as some of the other. Obviously, Seth Littrell, we haven't talked to him since the Alamo Bowl. Get his thoughts on Jackson Arnold. We'll get into that later. But definitely Zac Alleny, hearing from him, I think that was kind of the highlight of this luncheon.
Let's start there at the top then and hear from Brent Venables talking about Zac Alleny, and then Zac Alleny obviously talking about making the move over to Norman from Jacksonville State. Obviously, Zac Alleny and Brent Venables, their relationship goes all the way back to Clemson. And then also Zac Alleny talking about Danny Stutzman from this afternoon at the coaches' luncheon.
Well, there's a lot to know about him, and there's a lot that the opponent wants to figure out who we're going to be. Is it going to be Coach V? Is it going to be Zac Alleny? Is it going to be a combination? And we're just going to leave it to we'll figure it all out here. We'll let everybody figure it out when we get there. But Zac is incredibly bright. He's got tremendous talent, vision, instincts. He's got the ability to take the complex and make it easy for people, and a great communicator. He understands. He has very, very high standards and very detailed. Knows what it looks like. Is demanding, relentless, and passionate. He makes everybody around him better. The players love playing for him. And he and I could be good cop, bad cop. And And so I'm the bad cop.
Yeah, we do that.
At least in our space. I'm a good cop when it comes to a lot of the offensive guys, but I'm a bad cop when it comes to the defensive guys, and he definitely can be, the good cop. So we feed off of each other well, and we just have a natural chemistry that comes from being together for 9 years, and he understands me, and certainly I do him, and so there's a level of anticipation that I think as somebody that's new, there's not this transition necessarily that you normally would have, and things that you have to work through. We've been there, done that a lot together.
Well, the first thing, it feels like home. That's what I felt like, coming back, just being a part of things. And as Coach V said, I grew up with him as my mentor and learned everything I know in the game from him. And that perspective is what's driven me through my career. So being a chance to come back and align with that vision and just the structure, the way we do things, and I love the faith base that we have and the great kids we get to coach. It's been a really easy and a great transition, and really happy to be here. Absolutely. Danny's a coach on the field. He's anticipating, he understands exactly what we're trying to do, and just as a leader of men, he's really, really good. He understands who people are. He knows how to connect with guys on the team, whether it's offense or defense. And he leads in every aspect, so just awesome to have a rock solid, middle inside linebacker coming back that can help run the defense.
The way he says inside linebacker, that sounds like Brent. That is Brent.
And then the
extent.
hand, you mentioned it, the mannerisms, the hand movement. That's what Brent does. Sure. Every time he's talking, he's moving. So I don't know. I thought it was really fascinating. A very well-spoken guy. You can tell his football IQ is through the roof just hearing him talk about little things.
And that goes all the way back to the story that you wrote during the spring about Zac Alleny, and kind of talking to, I think it was his dad and some people that, obviously were around him as he has made this ascent up to defense coordinator at the University of Oklahoma.
Yeah, and it's just going to be really interesting to see what how much say does he have in what they're doing, because Brent went on to talk about people want to know what is this going to look like? Is it going to be the Zac Alleny defense? Is it going to be the Brent Venables defense? Is it going to be a combination? We're going to hear Zac kind of talk about talking into helmet mics and things like that, talking to Danny Stutzman, who's going to be leading the way. Like, does that mean that Zac's calling the defense? I don't know. And so I think it's really interesting to see what that's going to look like. But I do think that the overall takeaway is that Brent trusts him a lot.
There's a lot of trust.
And I think that it's clear he's going to have a big hand in
100%.
the defense. He wouldn't be at the luncheon today, too, if he wasn't. So, I think that that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. But it's clearly going to be, I think, probably both of them working together. But Zac's going to have a huge role in this defense, maybe more so than people realize.
There's no doubt about that. And we'll have a little bit more from Zac Alleny here shortly, talking about the helmet communication. But before we get there, let's talk what I think a lot of people are going to want to talk about when you're talking about, getting into camp, preseason, all that kind of stuff. And when you're at the University of Oklahoma, you got to start at the quarterback position. And Jackson Arnold, today was the first time that we'd heard from Seth Littrell talking about Jackson's development over the spring, post-spring into summer, as well as kind of leading into the beginning of August next week.
Yeah, we haven't talked to Seth. We didn't even talk to Seth after the Alamo Bowl. We haven't heard him comment.
And the only time that we did talk to him after he had been co-OC or had been elevated into that position was at one of the Alamo Bowl functions a couple days before the game.
Exactly. And so, to hear him talk about Jackson now versus then, because I remember him talking about Jackson down in San Antonio and just saying, how great of a talent he is and that they hope he develops and that this is going to be a big offseason for him. And then to hear him today talk about what he's worked on. And I think it's really, you'll hear him talk about this, but it's really interesting. He said that Jackson was very focused on identifying defenses, understanding schemes on the other side of the ball, studying film, because I think we all can sit here and say Jackson's got the talent, the athleticism to be a really great quarterback.
Right.
He can throw the ball all over the field. He can run. He can do all those things. It's the decision-making, right? And you look back at that Alamo Bowl performance, he didn't always have the best decision-making, maybe made some wrong reads. I think it was really interesting. Yeah.
He definitely did.
But, and some of that's just reading defenses wrong, not being out there a lot. And Seth, I thought it was interesting to hear him talk about that was their main emphasis for him in the spring, going up against this really good OU defense, seeing a lot of different looks. I thought that was really good to hear that was kind of the emphasis for him in the offseason, as well as, becoming a leader.
No doubt about it. Here is Seth Littrell, as well as the head man, Brent Venables, talking about quarterback one, Jackson Arnold.
Yeah, he's worked extremely hard this offseason. It really started right after the bowl game. Chip he has in the shoulder, wants to be great, very highly competitive, but he's a student of the game. Immediately we got back, he was already in the film room, watching a ton of film. This offseason, we put in a lot of work just understanding defensive identification, coverages, and I'll tell you what, this spring going against our defense, it was frustrating at times, especially for a young quarterback, but he's seen a lot of different looks, a lot of different pressures, a lot of different fronts, and he's worked extremely hard. And then obviously coming into the summer, being with Schmitty and the workouts he's done, been at a lot of those workouts, he's starting to really, feel comfortable stepping into his own and becoming more of a leader. And that's something at that position that, as you know, everybody's looking at you, not just when things are going well, but sometimes when things aren't going well, how are you reacting? What's your body language? What's your demeanor? Everybody's going to look at you. So really, taking that to heart and really working extremely hard, not only building his body up, but also his mind and his leadership ability.
Yeah, just tremendous growth. He's getting more and more comfortable in a new role. And I think in some ways it's kind of like riding a bike, but in many other ways, it's not. In the level of competition, the windows are going to be a lot smaller. The holes are going to be tighter. The timing is going to be sped up. The length and the speed and the physicality, the confusion, how the picture's going to change post-snap. All those things are going to be different for him. He knows that, and we've had through spring ball and a lot of work against each other. You do a lot more. Football is so much more year-round than it's ever been, and that doesn't make it better now. It just, there's more, opportunity to improve and get better. So he's able to see that and grow through that this summer. I see a guy that's more and more comfortable. He has, again, all of the right stuff from a maturity, a focus, a work ethic, the humility, the respect for what it takes to be successful. And then he knows that when I go out there, everybody's counting on me to be a level of consistency, to not be up and down, and he's got to just be consistent in how he leads and how he performs, and to bring out the best in people. And then he's got to take the blame for everything. I think the best leaders, they take the blame, even when it's not their fault, and that's how you earn trust and the respect of your teammates. And so you got a new guy, and there's a transition with that. Even if everybody was in the same locker room, Dylan did a great job. He's a guy that had started for 4 years in college football, and he earned that trust through a body of work. And so that's what Jackson, there's still a process to that too. And we're in a great position, but fall camp matters. To go into the season, be into a great rhythm from just that standpoint, and how he leads guys to get guys to compete at a really high level and to play hard for him. And I think that's what the best quarterbacks can do. And Jackson has all the tools to do so.
It's something that Seth said that kind of stuck out to me too was, and I don't know how much it is going to mean to the entire body of work of what Jackson Arnold is here as he moves into his second season, but going against Danny Stutzman, Billy Bowman, those guys that have been on the other side of the football throughout the spring, obviously, and then into the summer, some of the stuff that they can get done. And it sounds like Danny's basically living in the football facility right now with as much film as he's talked about watching over the course of the summer. But maybe that does mean something in the grand scheme of things. Like we've always talked about getting those guys back on defense, how much it was going to mean to that side of the football, but how much does that really mean to somebody like a Jackson Arnold that he can be around those guys and learn more about the defense, and obviously a defense that they know quite a bit about?
I was about to say, I don't think it's just about, obviously he's going up against really good players on that other side. It's that defensive mind in Brent Venables and all the different looks that he's going to throw at a guy like Jackson. I guarantee you he saw as many looks as he's going to get. He saw as many looks in the spring as he's going to get this season, just because of the way that Brent operates and the way that defense is so complicated. And I'm sure that Brent did that intentionally. Like he knows that he needs to help his quarterback develop. And I think that's why, you look back in the spring when we were hearing those things about, man, the offense is struggling at times. And then it sounded like towards the back half that they had start to find their groove. I think part of that was Brent turning it up a bit on them and knowing that not only does Jackson need to develop, but there's a lot of young guys, skill players, obviously a whole new offensive line. So I think that's a huge benefit for Oklahoma, and obviously Jackson Arnold, who, like I said, hasn't seen a lot of different defenses, especially in the college ranks. But I do think that this offseason, again, not to say he's not going to have growing pains. He's still going to have growing pains, but it is encouraging to hear some of the productive offseason that he had.
Something that is going to be new to college football this season. Obviously, you got the 2-minute warning that is going to be installed at the end of the second and fourth quarters. You also have the helmet communication thing that, we had talked about going all the way back to the Alamo Bowl when Oklahoma was down in San Antonio. They opted not to use it in the game. They obviously used it during the spring, but it is going to be interesting. So just kind of give everybody an idea if they don't know what has kind of been instilled into the college football game. Basically, coaches are going to be able to talk into the headsets or the helmets of one player on each side of the football. Obviously, that'd be Seth Littrell talking to Jackson Arnold, and then vice versa with the defense. Zac Alleny probably talking to Danny Stutzman, and I think that it can be more than one coach. Can it? It's just one player on the field.
I believe so, and I'm sure most teams, will opt to not have multiple coaches talking.
Everybody yelling at the same time. That
right,
can be pretty confusing.
And that's why you'll hear from Zach. He kind of mentions that it sounds like he's going to be the one doing it. I think Brent will have the capability, especially on defense, to hop in and say things. But Brent also talked about, especially on defense, they're still going to signal things in. It's easier to get that message across, especially if you're facing an up-tempo offense where you've got to get the call in quickly. And Danny, even though he's in the middle of the defense, he may not be able to communicate it quick enough as someone who's looking to the sideline. So I think they're still going to use signals. I think the offense is probably still going to use signals too for some of the guys, just because they're going to still go up tempos.
Sure.
You heard Seth says that as well, is that they go really fast, and so how quickly can he get the play call in through the mic to Jackson? He also doesn't want to be talking too much. That was another, I think, interesting thing is they get, I think it's 15 seconds over the mic, and if they were to huddle, it would make a lot of sense to kind of talk them through some things, but since both sides are kind of going fast, I think that it was interesting to hear them say, we don't want to say a whole lot. We want to get the play call in, maybe give them one piece of advice if it's a big play or something, and then let them, use their instincts and make plays out there. And I think that that's the right approach for it.
It'll be really interesting to see if, Sooner Sports or somebody puts out that audio that's coming in over the headsets and just kind of how everybody kind of works through this, because it's going to be new for a lot of people. I know that some teams did use it during their bowl games. Obviously, everybody used it during the spring, but here is Seth Littrell as well as Zac Alleny kind of talking about the new communication age coming into the college football world this season.
Well, we got the opportunity to work on a lot this spring, which is fortunate, and so having that technology available to where you can really work the kinks out early throughout spring ball really helped. And obviously there's a lot of communication that can go into it. Now, obviously, it does go off in 15, but we play extremely fast, so you've got to be careful as the play caller when you're talking to that mic, making sure that you turn that thing off once you give him, whatever that play may be, and the communication that I need to make with him in his ear, and then from there you got to show it off, because you don't want to be talking, you don't want to over communicate, especially that's snapping the ball. It's a lot of information. So it was a great spring, being able to have that available and really kind of working those kinks out early. So now going into the fall, we're extremely tough for it.
Yeah, so it'll be one of our leaders on defense, probably Andy's the first one, but, we sub more, that quarterback's in there most of the game. Defensively, guys, they get subbed out a little bit more, so we'll always have somebody on the field that I can communicate directly with, and Coach Beekman as well. Same, very similar to the offense. We got to try this out in the spring and have an opportunity to talk to the guys and just try and help them, with the call, the processing, all those things, and very similar to, as Seth said with Jackson, I'm trying to give Danny all the information up front and then let him make the calls, be out there, be aware of what's going on. So that way, I'm not messing with him when they snap the ball either.
And I think a misconception is that it eliminates, signaling, and I don't think that's the case unless they're going to completely huddle every snap, which some teams are going to do. You're going to get your huddles and those types of things. Offense is a little, in my opinion, is a little easier. You just don't want to give them too much information. Defensively, I think you're just giving, tendencies and, hey, look forward and remind somebody of something. And you still got defense is trained reaction, so you don't want to get in their way and, again, give them too much information.
Oklahoma and teams throughout the SEC will also have the 18 tablets that are going to be used on the sidelines in the coaches' booths. I think it's 18 is the number that is going to be supplied. They talked about that last week at SEC Media Day. Is it Apple that's
it'll be
going
Apple
to be
for
the
SEC?
Yeah.
Yep.
Should be interesting.
Apple better than Microsoft. Microsoft is working with the Big 12. So.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Interesting.
And I think the Big 10 is also Apple.
Okay. Well,
so
Apple taking care of everybody. It seems like that is going to be new. I think there's going to be a lot of, kind of working through, certainly some of the kinks there early in the non-conference portion of the season. You would hope that a lot of that stuff is alleviated by the time you get to conference play. But at the very least, it is something new that is coming to college football, and it's going to be somewhat interesting. Last but not least, and this was almost at the very end of today's program, some interesting stuff on special teams. This was a question that came from the congregation, the fans.
Let's just say that
there.
some of the fans ask better questions than some of the local media.
I would agree. Maybe we need to bring some of those people in.
We probably do. Yeah.
Maybe, they've definitely asked more questions of Zac Alleny than we have. But I would say that this was maybe the most interesting point of today's program, just in terms of maybe some actual news coming out before Oklahoma opens up preseason camp next week. Some special team stuff. And maybe he let it slip. Maybe it was something that wasn't supposed to be out there. But Brent Venables did say that going into the beginning of preseason camp, maybe it's Tyler Keltner that's going to be the odds-on favorite to win the place-kicking job.
Yeah, I was pretty shocked that
we both kind of looked at each other as he was saying it.
I was like, did he just say that? So it sounds like Tyler Keltner's the front runner. We heard great things about him back in the spring.
And we even saw some of it.
Yeah, I think he's the one that missed the field goal in the spring game, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think we all kind of thought, oh well, Zach Schmidt's going to probably end up being the guy, and we had heard great things about Zach Schmidt, during the spring as well. I think Oklahoma probably needs a new person there at the end of the day. Like I think they just have to try somebody else because Schmidt, just wasn't good enough. And, Brent kind of made it clear today talking about special teams how disappointed he was in that unit last year. I think his exact quote was, we have to be a hell of a lot better there.
Sure.
And I think that, whether it's kicker, I think that's at the forefront, but also punting last year wasn't great until they went to Luke Elzinga. Obviously, they get him back. Punt return wasn't good other than the 82-yard touchdown by Gavin Freeman in the first game.
Right.
There was I think he mentions 4 fumbles. So I think that side of the ball, we talk a lot about the offense and fixing the offensive line and can the defense be elite? That special teams unit, man, like if you're going to be playing, if you're going to be playing these close score games like OU has in the past and what we anticipate is going to be a really tough season, you have to be able to go out there and have somebody that can nail, a 45-yard field goal on the road in a tight game, or have a big punt return that sets you up for a score early in the game or late in the game. Whatever it is, you need those things to happen. And I think that it was interesting to hear Brent talk about just how big of an emphasis that third side of the ball was this offseason.
You want to flip that record in one-score games, which we've talked about here on this program. We talked about it on the Unofficial 40, 3-7 in one-score games in the first 2 seasons. I think that's going to be something that not only is highlighted when you head out onto the road in some of these SEC road games, but maybe just up and down the schedule. You have to be much, much better on special teams. Here is Brent Venables talking about the importance of just simply getting better in that, with that unit moving into the season.
Obviously, our production has not been anywhere remotely close to what it needs to be, far below our standards, and we put a lot of focus on it this year. Certainly Doug Deacon, as a special teams coordinator, spent the last couple of decades at San Diego State. Year in and year out, there's nobody in the country that had the consistency that he did. Very attractive resume, and I love where we're at with our personnel. I think some of it is we had 4 turnovers on special teams. We fumbled 2 kickoffs and we fumbled 2 punt returns, and we had several punt returns that we recovered, but we lost yardage there. And then in the first half of the season, getting the right guys in the right seat on the bus was something that we went through. And so through the first half of the season, we were in the 37, 38-yard net average in punting the football. And then we made a switch with personnel. And Luke Elzinga, the back half of the season, averaged net punted over 50 yards a punt. We haven't been consistent making our kicks, and that's hurt us in several games. We've lost 8 games by 1 score or less, and so making your field goals is important. Making the layups. And Tyler Keltner is a 4-year starter. Spent his last year at Florida State, but was the all-time
leading kicker in East Tennessee State history, and he was fantastic all spring. So I think the addition of having Luke Elzinga start our fall camp as a starting punter and Tyler Keltner is probably the odds-on favorite. Well, Zach Schmidt will have a chance to be more consistent. And then I think this will be, again, our third year. We've played a lot of young players. We led the country last year in the final top 20 teams in the country with freshmen and redshirt freshmen snaps. And I just think that year 2 and year 3, our systems and how we do things from a fundamental standpoint, how you get on the bus will pay dividends this year in our special teams unit. So we don't have anywhere to go but up. And I say that tongue in cheek. We got to get a hell of a lot better, and we have fell well below our standards in our special teams, production.
Perhaps that's one of those things too that we did not give enough attention or maybe headlines to the hire of Doug Deacon. And I know that you've kind of dug through the numbers. Oklahoma last year in S&P special teams wise, 94th. San Diego State has been one of those programs perennially that has been extremely good in that in that unit, in the special teams unit.
Yeah, I think last year, like you said, 94th for Oklahoma. I think San Diego State was around
56th last year, but the 2 years prior to that, they ranked 13th and 15th. So you're talking about top 20-ish type, top 15, I guess, really, type special teams unit at San Diego State.
Yeah, and I believe in I think it was 17 or 18 years at San Diego State, I want to say, 13 of those he finished in the top 25 in special teams efficiency across the board. That's all units. So he's done a really good job there. I know that they've had some, talented kickers and punters come through there as well. So I think that they're hopeful. Look, I'm not saying they need to go out and be a top 10 unit in the country next season, but if you could be a top 40 unit, that's a hell of a lot better than where you were a year ago. And it always felt like anytime they were punting, something was going to go wrong. Gavin Freeman, it always felt like you were holding your breath with him back there. And then obviously there was just absolutely zero faith in Zach Schmidt to make a big kick in late games. I mean, you think back to the OSU and Kansas loss. You had a missed kick from Zach Schmidt against OSU. I don't believe he missed one against Kansas, but you also had, I think, a fumbled kickoff in that one.
They didn't turn the momentum of the game there in the fourth quarter.
Exactly. So you're talking about 2 of their losses. What if Zach Schmidt makes that field goal? Well, they lost by 3. So if he makes that field goal, it's a different game.
Sure.
What if they don't fumble against Kansas? They probably win that game. So you're talking about the difference of a 10-2 season versus a 12-0 season because of a few plays on special teams. And I know it's a lot larger than that, and the game comes down to more plays than that. But I do think that if they can improve in those areas, and I also just think they have so many dynamic players, Eddie, that can return the ball too. I'm interested to see what they do at whether it's punt returner or kick returner. I'd love to see Peyton Bowen out there in some of those. I know Jalil Farouk did a nice job at times last year returning kicks, but I wonder who they end up putting back there, because I do think that could be a difference maker for them.
That kind of stuff can certainly flip a game, and especially in some of these games and the tightness in the fourth quarter that we expect some of these games to be. It's going to be mighty interesting, and it's also going to be interesting to think that we're going to be talking about guys out on a football field here in about a week. So today kind of got the juices flowing a little bit. I know we were talking about it when we were leaving the church earlier today. It's starting to feel a little bit more and more like football season, and if you need confirmation of that, just look at next week's weather forecast with the triple digits returning to Oklahoma. It's going to be miserable there for a second and for about a month. But I think the end of that, or the end of the tunnel there, is we're going to be talking about football season here, not too long from now. And obviously here in about a month, we're really going to be in it.
Yeah, I think 36 days.
It's crazy.
Is when kickoff is. So super exciting. Even hearing, Joe John and Seth kind of talk about some of the playmakers that have stood out. Jaden Gibson has been. A lot
of Jaden Gibson hype today.
That has been a name that continues to come up. I know I heard that name, back in the spring. Obviously, he was a guy that stood out because a lot of the receivers were out, but I think he had a really good offseason. So interested to see him. I know they're really high on the tight end room as well. Offensive line going to be a huge storyline. And that defense, can they live up to these expectations? And there's some position battles that I think are going to be pretty fun to watch. So I know next week you and I might do a little fall camp preview, kind of the biggest storylines going into it. So that'll be fun. And we still have the SEC previews rolling out where we previewed all the
rolled
teams.
out Eric Kane today from Tennessee. On Friday morning, it's going to be Auburn with Justin Hawkinson. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Oklahoma's first road trip that, it's easy to say now here at the end of July, but I think that you're starting to circle, like, obviously September 21 with Tennessee coming to town, but September 28th is starting to become very, very interesting to me to close out September, and obviously it's going to be Oklahoma's first road game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge game. And again, if you can get to 5-0, I keep saying, if you can get to 5-0, you're heading to Dallas, down to the Cotton Bowl, feeling really good about yourself. And we all know how that game goes. It's somewhat of a coin flip every single year. So, I think that it's going to be fun, man. Like I just, the closer we get and the more you look at that schedule, you're like, man, this is going to be a lot of fun.
A lot of fun and a lot of unknown. Just a couple of scheduling items here coming up. Obviously, August 3rd, a week from this Saturday, is going to be Meet the Sooners Day. You have to be a member of One Oklahoma. You can go to oneoklahoma.com, I believe, to kind of get yourself involved with that if you want to take your kids down there. And then we'll have a local media day. We're still trying to figure out what date that's going to actually be, but we expect it to be at some point next week. And then you roll into camp right after that. It's going to be a lot of fun. So keep it right here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. We're looking forward to the start of Oklahoma in the SEC for real this time, moving into the 2024 season. So for George Stoia, I'm Eddie Radosevich. Like, share, subscribe, tell everybody about it. We will see you right back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel next time.